we went up, and I think it was a couple of hours ride up in the mountains of Wyoming. It was just beautiful. And we were coming back, and so we're on the home stretch, and we had this big pasture to go through. And then you kind of turned, and you went into the horse corral for the horses to come home. Now, does anybody have horses, know about horses? Okay, so you might know that sometimes when horses get close to their home, they take off. Yeah. So here I was, this little girl on this big horse, and all of a sudden, my horse took off. And I remember my feet flew out of the stirrups. I was bouncing on the saddle, grabbing to the mane, grabbing onto the brim of the saddle, and just screaming, right? And my horse just galloped off down that pasture, turned to go into his corral, and there was this narrow opening that he could go in, and on either side was a big, tall fence. And I remember as a little girl thinking, he's going to jump the fence, he's going to jump the fence, he's going to jump the fence. I'm flailing, he's going to jump the fence. Well, he didn't jump the fence. He ended up going through, and he stopped. Here comes the guide. Here comes my family. Are you okay? Are you okay? The first thing I said, and I don't even know why I said this. It's the first lie I remember telling. I said, my horse jumped the fence. And they're like, oh, your horse jumped the fence. You stayed on. And it became this tall tale, right? And everyone was so amazed that I stayed on my horse and it jumped that fence. And honestly, the minute I said it, I was like, I kind of felt guilty, right? And then we go back to the dude ranch, and we're having dinner, and my parents are talking about it, and I was like, oh. And I kind of thought I should tell the truth, but I was scared, and I didn't. So we get home. So my mom has a lot of sisters, and so I remember her calling her sisters, and Aunt Marianne, Jenny's horse jumped the fence, Aunt Connie, Jenny's horse jumped the fence, Aunt Julie, Aunt Sheila, and I remember just hearing the story come up from time to time over the years, and my toes curling in shame, right? It didn't happen, right? And you know those stories that you kind of you all get together for holidays, and it's kind of the stories you talk about? Well, this seemed to be one of them, right? And I always dreaded when it would come up. And there I am in high school, and this horse story would come up, and I'd think, I have to, this didn't, should I confess, And then I go to college, and it's even worse, and I'm just like, okay, I'm an adult now. I've got to fess up to this thing, right? But you know what, you guys? I was embarrassed, and it's a little silly lie. I had shame. It was such a big thing. The secret had grown so big that I just couldn't bring myself to confess. I couldn't bring myself to say, you guys, you know what? Actually, that really didn't happen, Okay, it gets worse. So then I have kids, right? And my kids are at my mom and dad's house. And I hear them in the other room. My mom says, did we ever tell you the story when your mom's horse jumped the fence? And I'm like, no! And I'm thinking, I gotta run in there and tell them it's a lie. And then I was like, oh no, but I'm trying to teach them not to lie. So how would that look? So I can't confess it now. I have to wait till they're older, right? And it just became this thing, honestly. I had tucked it away for so long, I couldn't share it, right? And so finally, here's how I ended up finally sharing it, you guys. I went through a Bible study. This was just 3 years ago, 40 years old. 40 years old. And for you Bible study writers and teachers, Bible studies change lives. Change lives. Oh my goodness, this was one of those. So my friend was actually leading the study, and the topic was unconfessed sin. And by this time in my life, I had gone through healing, and there were so many things hiding under my rocks that I had already dug out, and I dealt with. And I had experienced freedom and healing from. And I knew the power in shedding light on secrets. I knew it. And so, but there's still this stupid little horse story, And so she was talking, and she said, think about it. Is there anything in your life? What's hiding under your tent? Because it'll steal your joy at one point or another. It'll make you feel bad about yourself at one point or another. What's hiding under your tent? And I'm like, okay, I've gone through all this revealing and telling, and now it's this horse story thing. So I said, okay, you know what? I said, God, you know what? I'm going to confess this. I'm going to do it. 40 years old, I can do it. And so I went home and did the brave thing. I wrote an email to, I'm serious, to my whole family. And I had this whole, you remember the story in Wyoming of the horse? It really didn't happen, and I'm so sorry, all these years I've been wanting to tell you, blah, 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 this big, long dissertation, right? And so I didn't send it. I chickened out. And so I said, well, you know what? Okay, I've got it ready, and I will do that sometime, but I don't think now's the right time, and it's really not that big of a deal. It's just stupid. It's not a big deal. Go to the study the next day. What's the topic? Delayed confession. I am not kidding you. Sometimes you have an intention to confess and you move forward, but then you don't really do it. And I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, I'm doing it. So long story short, I talked to my mom, I talked to my family, and you know what, you guys? When you get a secret out, it dissolves. I'm telling you. And again, I know that's a silly example, but my mom, she says to me, oh, Genny, I feel so bad you kept that inside so many years,